My name's Ken Beer. I'll introduce myself a little bit more shortly. And we've got Emma Arrow there. Emma's the training coordinator at Safe System Solutions, and I will introduce Emma also shortly. But welcome. I'm going to just cover off a few things. So Emma just mentioned we're recording the sessions. Why do we record the sessions? Well, we want to ensure that anybody who can't make a session can catch up with a recording. And also, if you want to just check back on something or reconfirm something or hear it again, you can always go back to the recording. So they'll be available in our learning management system, Moodle, at about 24 hours after the session usually. Little content warning, we do have some road crashes that we look at. It's nothing graphic, but it's trying to analyze crashes that have happened to try to prevent crashes in the future and understand a bit about them. So just a warning there, if that's something that may disturb you, just be aware there are a few of them, nothing, as I say, too graphic though. We're using Zoom. Obviously, you've made it this far, so well done. Now, in here, the way that you're going to communicate, because it's Zoom webinar, so the way that you're going to communicate is predominantly through the chat function. And quite a few of you have already been saying hi and making comments in the chat, and that's excellent. And thank you for that. So please keep doing that. Don't wait until I stop along the way and say, are there any questions? Just type your questions in as they go, and then I can have a read and we can work through those. If for some reason the chat function's not working, have a go at the Q&A function. Chat's the sort of dominant one we prefer you use. The Q&A is okay, and we will go to those, but the chat function's the preference. Now, we do have the ability to unmute you, or give you the ability to unmute yourself. You have to put your hand up so we know, and then we can go and find you and give you the ability to unmute yourself. You can't turn your camera. There'll be no camera ability at all in this session, so you can be there in your pajamas, no worries, and we will. Nobody will ever see. But if you really want to talk about something, or at points along the way, I will ask the volunteers to talk us through a site or those sorts of things. And you just put your hand up, and then we'll find you unmute. Give you the ability to unmute yourself. Over on the chat function, there's a little drop down here, and you can chat to everybody. And we do like a bit of conversation happening amongst participants. We lose a lot of things not being in person, the ability to sort of network and have a chat to people at lunch and those sorts of things. But we do have the ability to have this sort of chat going behind the scenes. So you can make your comments or your questions live to everybody, or it can just come through to panelists, so they'll get to myself. If you should have got a memory stick in the mail. Don't worry if you didn't yet. That's not critical. Everything is on the learning management system, but there are PDF slides available. If your tech fails, Zoom fails, best thing is the old shutdown restart. Well, shut down Zoom and start Zoom again, and then maybe shut down your computer and start your computer again. But if worse comes to worse, it's probably just worth watching the recording. Really, it's probably the easiest way. And I'll introduce Emma and let her tell you a little bit about how she can help you through this session.
Thanks, Ken. Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're really excited to have you part of this program. As Ken mentioned, I am the training coordinator. So if you have any logistical issues with the training around your not being able to make it or accessing anything at all, just shoot me an email or give me a call. My number is there, and I can certainly assist you, and especially with things like Moodle. So you would have received an email from Safe System Solutions with your login details. If you have participated in a program previously, you wouldn't have received that email necessarily, but it will still be the same login details used before. But if you're not sure of what your login details are, certainly shoot me an email and I can resend them to you. And if you have any issues or anything accessing any of the content, reach out and I'll be happy to help.
Thanks, Emma. That's excellent. It's lovely of you to show your face and say hi. We had a little bit of crackling on the audio there, but we'll keep working on that. But Emma just wanted to pop in and say hi, show her face, and reach out and say that if you are having any difficulties, to please shoot an email through, get in contact, and she's wonderful and super helpful, and she'll get you through the logistical admin side of the course. No worries. Thanks, Emma, and we'll catch you later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the program.
Thank you. See ya. And this is me, and I'm here to try to get you through the technical content side of the course. So, as mentioned, my name's Ken Beer. I'm the Principal Engineer at Safe System Solutions. And I know a number of you. It's great to see people introducing themselves on Moodle, and it's great to see old friends and people who are very experienced in road safety, which is wonderful, and have been around for quite a while. And it's lovely to meet new people, see new people, people early in their career, and it's wonderful to have that broad spread. I used to work for the Victorian government in road safety for Vic Roads, and I've been sort of working around Southeast Asia in different road safety capacities for a while. I've put the QR code there to my LinkedIn. I've got it at the bottom of the page here. It'll be there for a few slides. The reason I do that is, I mean, the road safety conversation it's ongoing, and we need to continue it. There's new things emerging all the time, and I utilize that platform quite a bit to share content that we find interesting or new. So it's a good way to keep up to date. So please connect with me. The other thing is that my my objective is to make sure you pass this course, right? And so my contact details are there. So at any point along the course, if you're struggling, you can't quite get your head around something, get in contact. Let's have a one-on-one Zoom chat or a Teams meeting or a phone call, and we'll work through that and make sure you get to that competency level that we need. So Moodle is the learning management system that we're using, as Emma mentioned. If you haven't got access to Moodle, you need access to Moodle. So if you haven't got that email, you have to send Emma an email and find out what's going on. Look in your junk, and it should be from Safe System Solutions. Get yourself access, because you need to use this to answer the assignments or quizzes or tests at the end of each session. Upload your assignment. You've got all the resources in there. It houses everything basically. You get the electronic version of your certificate through this platform. A couple of other little things that we like to do to keep it as interactive as possible. So one thing is Wally the Wombat. Wally the Wombat is a warning sign, Wally the Wombat warning sign, and Wally will appear a number of times throughout the session. And you have to just keep a count of the number of times this warning sign appears through the slides. And in the quiz at the end of the session, one of the questions will be, how many times did Wally appear? And so you'll get a mark if you get that correct. Now, we have given you a little bit of tolerance either side of the Wally count, just in case you are dealing with spilled coffee or something like that. But there's only a small amount of tolerance there. Now, this is not a Wally in the official count. That's just what a Wally looks like. So your Wally count is 0. And we do like to give out prizes as well. So I'll be asking questions, and the first person to answer correctly will win a prize. If you volunteer for case studies and things like that to talk us through a site or the like, you'll likely win a prize. And any particularly great questions are likely to win prizes. The other one is, if you log in early to the sessions, we do a little bit of trivia. It could be road safety trivia, could be just random general knowledge trivia, and a chance to win a few prizes, something to incentivize you to jump in a little bit early. You might be saying, well, how on earth do you get the prizes to us? Well, at the end of the session, as I say, once you successfully complete the course, you will get an electronic copy of your certificate via Moodle. But a week or two later, you'll get a pack in the mail with a physical copy of your certificate and any prizes you've won along the way. And how do you successfully complete this course? Well, you've got to attend 4 out of the 5 live webinars and view the one that you missed if you missed one. Now, if you absolutely can't make more than one, get in contact with Emma. Just let her know and she'll work something out for you. You need to complete all the set tasks and you need to get an 80% plus grade for all of the quizzes and assignments. So it's a pretty high benchmark. However, very achievable because everything is going to be covered in the sessions and you get 3 attempts at everything and you have access to one-on-one coaching as needed. So as I say, my aim is to ensure that everybody achieves that competency benchmark. And yeah, so usually people have a go at everything first themselves based on what they have learned and got and understand it. If they really don't do so well, that's when they sort of jump in for the one-on-one coaching. Or if you're just really completely lost in what you need to be doing. So that's the sort of admin logistics of the course. I'm just going to check here if there's any questions that have come in the chat. So somebody's popped into the Q&A. Are attendees on mute? There's a lot of background noise in how do I put myself? Everybody's on mute. So is the answer to the question that was in the Q&A. You do not have the ability to unmute yourself at this stage. The only way is if we were to give you access to unmute yourself. So don't worry if there's lots of background noise, if kids are screaming, it's not being heard at all by anybody apart from yourself. Any other questions or comments about the running of the course, what we've got planned? Okay. Well, I'll get into some of the actual content. And at this stage, I'll just pay my respects to traditional owners of the different lands on which we're running this training. Pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And it is quite a number of lands. We've got people from all across New Zealand, which is wonderful. And really, New Zealand's having a huge uptake in the idea of the SAFE system and capacity building around the SAFE system, but also one of the tools within the SAFE system, the SAFE system assessment framework, which is what we'll predominantly be discussing in this course. That's what you're here to do, to learn how to use the tool. I'm based in Melbourne and haven't been to New Zealand for a while now with coronavirus, but back in the day used to be over there quite a lot for different work purposes. Also, my sister used to have a farm just outside Timaru there for those from the South Island who know the area. But the first thing we want to do is start to ensure everybody's on the same page with the principles of the SAFE system. And so this session is really about the principles and elements of the SAFE system, determination of kinetic energy thresholds for different crash types, the difference between traditional approaches to road safety and the SAFE system approach. And then we'll cite a bit of best practice in some of the areas that a lot of us don't work as much in, which is the behavioural change and vehicle safety interventions. But it is a holistic system we're dealing with, and we need to have at least some understanding of how they interact with the road environment and the speeds. So we'll delve into that a bit. It's also important as a road safety champion, which I hope you either all are or will be, to have a bit of understanding about a few of those key elements and reasons why speed is such a critical element within the SAFE system. So that's what we're aiming to get out of this session. And I'll be nice for the first Wally. Your Wally count is 1. That's what you'll be looking for. All right. As I mentioned, just pop your questions in or comments in as I'm going, and I'll deal with them in different bits when I pause. Now, Road to Zero. Road to Zero is New Zealand's road safety strategy for the decade we're currently in, and it's pretty cutting-edge document in a number of ways. Sort of on the world stage, it's pretty advanced. It's got some wonderful stuff in there. I hope you've got a copy and or you've had a look at it. If not, it's worth a grabbing and a sort of quick look at how New Zealand is going to attack the epidemic of death and serious injury that is occurring on the roads. So, but one just sort of particular thing I honed in on, sort of contextualizing this course, is this little bit in the action plans associated with that, and the KPIs, the key performance indicators. So you've got some stuff on general public's understanding of Vision Zero and the safe system, but in here is percentage of people who have completed an approved safe system training course and showed improved understanding of the safe system. And then percentage of road infrastructure projects that have been subject to a road safety audit and or safe system assessment. So it's sort of squarely set there that safe system assessments are now entrenched in practice in New Zealand, and it's filtering its way into the many business case processes and the like that exist, but something that will continue to grow, and it'll grow alongside road safety auditing. So two sort of complementary assessments, and I'll take you through the differences throughout the course. But there you go, some pretty exciting stuff. All right, what I want to do is show you the safe system in a diagram form. And I sort of went, oh, I wonder which diagram I should use for this group, because there's many diagrams, lots of different diagrams emerging around the world, and lots of people are sort of creating their own new tweaks on the diagrams. I actually I'm going to use, obviously, the one in your current road safety strategy, which is here. But before I do that, I think it's probably good to take you back in time a little bit, to the point where Australia and New Zealand were formally adopting at a national level the safe system approach as the way to address road safety. So, road safety as a sort of industry and something people have been working on has been around for a very long time. The safe system came as a way and a philosophy to attack the road trauma. And this diagram here was really one of the first ones. In fact, I'm going to give a prize here to the person who can tell me the year that New Zealand first formally at a national level adopted the safe system approach to road safety. Just have a guess at years. Chuck it in the chat. You're not gonna lose any points or anything for incorrect guesses, but the closest will win the prize. Okay. And Billy, you are our first prize winner. I'm taking a note of that. So Billy guessed 2003, and now it was either exactly when it got signed off in New Zealand, 2003 or 4. It was definitely in that period. Australia was 2004, but we're usually a little bit behind New Zealand in many ways. But New Zealand was certainly on the fore, like, pioneering a lot of this stuff in the Australia-New Zealand context. As easy as that to win a prize, people. And what the prize is always a mystery, even to me. There were some pretty awesome socks that were sent out to people after the other course. Anyway, this diagram, right? This diagram was really interesting. And I was working in the road safety department in the Victorian government as this sort of debate was happening in the 2003-04 era as to exactly how we should frame this safe system, which was, pretty much stolen or copied from the Swedish way of thinking, the Swedes, and how they were thinking about things. And we were trying to adapt it to the Australian New Zealand context. Right. The really interesting parts of it, don't worry if you can't see the details of these diagrams. At the middle here, we've got human tolerance to physical force. How much force can we take as humans before we are injured or killed? So it's an interesting starting point, isn't it? And middle and center to the way you think about death and serious injury on the road network. But if you think about it from a physics and kinetic energy and biomechanical tolerance level, right? We're already assuming crashes are going to happen. That's interesting. That's a bit of a shift already in mindset, isn't it? We'll come back to that for sure. But human tolerance to physical force, central to the safe system, understanding that. Then we have the elements: safe speed, safe vehicles, safe roads and roadsides. And that was it. That was the system, right? And they put a circle around it. And then as there was this debate, hang on a second, haven't we forgotten a pretty important part of this system? The user themselves. And this is where we got a bit of divide happen, right? And there was there were some camps that were saying, we've got a, human responsibility, road user responsibility and being alert and compliant has to be critical to this system. And there was another camp saying, no, we are going to create a system that is impenetrable to human failure and mistakes and stupidity and all of those things that humans are sort of biologically wired to do. Now, I was in the let's try to create this impenetrable system camp because that's sort of the essence of the philosophy of the safe system. We want to encourage everybody and try to make them all do the right thing all the time. But we're realistic here. These are humans we're talking about, right? They are going to make mistakes all the time, right? I've made many mistakes already this morning, right? None of them have resulted in death or serious injury that I'm aware of. But, that's part of being human. We make mistakes all the time, okay? They're usually very, very minor. But we learn from our mistakes. Sometimes it's just how we're wired and what we do. So to the idea of trying to, say that we can only have a safe system if everybody is alert and compliant all the time defies actually some of the fundamental philosophies of the safe system. In fact, we're actually trying to design a system for the failures. So our system, with these other elements, the vehicles, the roads and roadsides, and the speeds, make it so that failure is not death and serious injury. But anyway, that debate roared on, and what happened was that little doohickey there was put as this sort of square over the top of alert and compliant road users. I feel it was a bit of a fail because it basically said that, people have a responsibility to be alert and compliant, and if they're not alert and compliant and they're killed or seriously injured, ultimately their fault. And we challenge that under a safe system. It's ultimately the system designer's fault if that happens. And I don't think about, I'll talk about a few of these things later. But anyway, that was an old version of the safe system. Let's jump forward now to New Zealand and how New Zealand is looking at the safe system in a diagram, and it's different and it's quite advanced, really, for a lot of reasons. But you're seeing there some not these specific pillars of the safe system anymore. I mean, yes, they're sort of integrated into it, and the philosophy of the safe system is still there with the principles, but represented in a slightly different way. But I'll just run through these very briefly, which are the sort of key principles in the New Zealand context, although they do align very well with the sort of traditional principles. They're just sort of presented in a different way. We strengthen all parts of the road transport system, so that's good. It's not saying we're going to solve this with one thing. The vehicles will fix all the problems, or the people will fix all the problems, or the infrastructure will fix all the problems. No, it's a holistic system. We design for human vulnerability. All right, so there you go. That's that one, biomechanical tolerance, designing with the kinetic energy in mind, and we're going to really delve into that in detail. That's critical to a safe system assessment. We have a shared responsibility for improving road safety, so it's sort of acknowledging that the system designers are very much a part of the responsibility there for every incident that happens out there on the road network. It's not voiding responsibility to the individual road user, and it's saying they're part of the game as well. But it's really acknowledging system designers. And when I say system designers, I mean you and me and anybody who's making decisions about the network, about the legislation, the vehicle standards and regulations, anything in there. Actions are grounded in evidence and evaluated. I love the fact that this is in your safe system diagram, because road safety of anything, well, there's probably a few other areas, but road safety is it is astounding how many myths, rumors, and misconceptions and people who are absolutely believing something is effective because of their own personal experience. And that's a real danger for us as road safety practitioners, because we are road users as well. In one form or another, we ride bikes, or we walk, or we drive cars, and we experience the road network and the like. And you can't be you can't make absolute calls on holistic community road safety based on your personal experience. You are not a representative sample. What you have to do is understand the evidence, the research, and make informed calls about these things based on all of that. Now, the challenge we've got is interfacing with the public and their absolute belief in their expertise in road safety. Because, well, I'm sure many of you have, in my 20 plus years in road safety, if I got $1 for every time somebody started their sentence with, "I've been driving for 40 plus years," and then they proceed to explain how the road system should be designed and managed, and that is their absolute belief, and you can't degrade that, because they're genuinely that is their reasoning why things should be done from their personal experience. But it's not a representative sample, and it's one individual, and so we've got to be very careful about how that plays out. But I'll talk about this more as well. We often make decisions for a collective, so for every road user, but then we try to talk to the individuals as though it's an individual one-on-one decision. So, we'll lower a speed limit. And then when people complain, we say things like, "Well, we're doing this for your safety." And they go, "No, you are not. This is for revenue raising." And we're like, "Well, it's not for revenue raising. It's for the community safety as a whole, and you're part of the community." But what they hear is, "You're not safe." And they go, "I've been driving this road for 40 plus years and I've never had an issue, and now you're just want to take some money off me." That's how they see and feel it. So that's an interesting one there. And Mike, g'day Mike, good to see you. Mike says, I have a checkbook, therefore I am an accountant. Same thinking comes with driver license and road safety. Absolutely. Yeah, you've put it very well there. Road safety actions support health, well-being, and livable practices. Now, this is kind of New Zealand genius in sort of policy strategy form. Why? Because New Zealand's recognised that road safety, massive road safety wins, are often far more palatable when framed as health, well-being, livable place, active transport objectives. Like it's amazing sometimes. Again, as I say, when you go in and you try to transform an area and you frame it as road safety, because it's so individual and randomized in terms of crashes, that everybody sort of thinks, no, road safety is about the ice addict who drives, stupid speeds through the residential areas or these sort of things. It's not. Like, they're just imposing stuff on me. But making it more attractive, more livable, more walkable, more rideable. Now we're on to seeing things that they can be in on. There's some exceptions to this rule, but generally, so that's pretty, I suppose, crafty in a good way by New Zealand. We make safety a critical decision-making priority, and that's again, shouldn't be looked upon lightly as a statement, because you'll see throughout this course, there's plenty of examples where safety has not been a critical decision-making priority. There's been other priorities which have trumped the health and safety of the community. And the SAFE system prioritises the health and safety of humans above anything else. We promote good choices, but plan for mistakes. I love it. And that's critical. That's critical. And that goes back to what I was saying, is that absolutely, we want to get everybody to do the best they possibly can in terms of not making mistakes, making good choices. But we have to start getting our head in the space of how do we manage the mistakes? How do we manage failure? And, I now, have spent many years looking at the road system, and much of my career was looking at the road system through a lens of trying to prevent crashes. Okay. Now I look at the road system in how do I minimize and manage crashes. It's a slightly different tweak, but what it does mean is that I now scan a road environment and I look for potential energy, so speeds and angles and weights, as well as looking for things that might deceive the road user or aren't as effective as they could be in terms of signs and lines and those sorts of things. But we'll get into that. I'm going to give you a little analogy here, and then I'm going to get you to do some interacting here. So let's talk about safety culture, and let's get out of our industry. Let's go to the manufacture and production of widgets. And there was a time in a factory, back in the day, where widget production was, a fairly open system. The factories were fairly open, and people could, they got kids in to help, clean the machines and do the bits and tasks, and they were fairly quick. But, it was acknowledged it was dangerous in there. The machines were dangerous, and it was said, hey, safety is your responsibility. Okay, you've got to protect yourself. It's dangerous. This is a dangerous system we've got. Protect yourself. And they, gave them some training. This is how you, use the machine. This is how you're safe about it. Do this and that. And there was, quite a lot of death and serious injury, and arms ripped off, and kids killed and crushed, and others killed and crushed. And people used to come in after a boozy lunch and, work in the factory, and that was all sort of part of the system. And, people said, well, to produce widgets, this is the price that has to be paid. Then there came along the reactive culture in that environment and said, well, we better start fixing some of these problems, all right? That machine's now killed 3 people, and let's start to address it. Or this machine's ripped arms off. How about instead of people pushing stuff in, we give them a stick and they can push it in with the stick, or let's put a particular guard on this area, or let's only let people who have done this training course, use that machine, or these sorts of rules and bits and pieces that come in to solve these individual spot issues. Then the economists get on board, all right? And they come in and they look at the factory and they go, we've done some calculations here. Lost productivity, lost time, and payouts to families is costing your business, X amount. If you are to invest £30,000 in retrofitting all of these machines with guards and doing all these other safety interventions, it'll actually give you £90,000, is pounds back in the day, obviously, £90,000 of safety benefit in terms of production of more widgets. So we've come up with this thing called a benefit cost ratio, and you have a benefit cost ratio of 3. So you get £3 for every pound you invest. And the factory managers say, oh yeah, this is a good investment. All right, let's do that. Then it sort of elevates into what we call the proactive safety culture, which basically says we need this extremely high level of safety that acknowledges humans being humans and making mistakes, and we need redundancies in the systems and backups and cutoffs and good training and good machines and everything like that at super high level of safety, and we will produce widgets up to whatever can be done within that sort of framework. And then you need to continually invest in maintaining that high level of safety. Okay, it's an ongoing investment in that. So where do we sit in the road transport system? Well, of course, you've been putting this analogy to roads in your mind, which is excellent. And even a few of the words I've used, well, it's not my diagram, it's actually a diagram I've got from a colleague, but mobility is in there instead of widget production. But where do we sit? I mean, we sit probably across a number of these areas with the road transport system. It is, highly pathological in safety culture, where we, give people licenses and say, hey, it's dangerous out there, and you have to protect yourself. It's your responsibility. Okay, well, we may be doing that to try to ensure that they are safe out there, but we are sending them out into an area with a potential for death and serious injury. Reactive, absolutely. We try to address those black spots as they occur. Calculating, it's just absolutely inherent into our decision making, and benefit cost ratios are coming out our ears, business cases and the like. We do some proactive stuff, and there's more and more happening, and I do like to see it. And we do see things, proactive examples, which I really like we're seeing new highways go in now with continuous barrier systems all the way along. It's not wait, we'll put it in and we'll wait and we'll see where people run off the road, and then we'll put barrier in those areas. I mean, the analogy is often given of the high-rise building and balconies, and you wouldn't build a high-rise building and then have balconies and only put, not put rails and wait and see where people fall off. Or maybe you go, oh, actually, we'll put rails on the outside of curbs with a radius of this, on the balcony with the radius of this amount, because that's slightly higher chance that people will fall off there. I mean, sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? But that's essentially what we're doing with the road systems. But now we're in a position where we're putting, balcony railings across the whole new road system. So that's good. Also, that you don't get caught up in benefit cost ratio games with the railings on those high-rise buildings, do you? You go, actually, we've done an economic analysis, and far better BCR if we don't put those railings. Yeah, okay, we're going to get a couple of serious injuries, but hey, BCR is pretty damn good. you don't entertain that sort of thinking in that space. Another example of proactive one, and this one screams home to me that we have hope that people can prioritize safety over small economic gains in terms of travel time and those sorts of things, is school speed zones, right? And I mean, doing a lot of speed zoning stuff in my career, and it's fascinating at so many levels. But anyway, that's but one of the things we were, getting school speed zones out there back in the day, and that was awesome, and we were so excited by it. And then we had them in there for a while. But we did an economic analysis under our traditional BCR methodology of school speed zones after they've been in for a while. And what we discovered is that the benefit cost ratio is just staggeringly bad for school speed zones. Like it's horrifically bad. And any economist that looks at it would just go, no way, right? Because the way you do an economic analysis in these sorts of environments is to understand what is the impact on travel time of vehicles. I mean, this is real traditional BCR style calculations, not taking into account sort of different externalities. But what is the travel time increase for cars going through those school speed zones, right? And you take all of those little seconds, 1 or 2 seconds extra, and you add them up for all the vehicles. And so you get this, and you do that for, 5 years, 10 years worth of time. And you get this massive pool of time. And then you multiply that by New Zealand's standard dollar value for an hour for a New Zealander. It's something like $88 or something like that in productivity to society. And you get this massive dollar figure that you're costing for lost productivity. Then what you do is you put a dollar value to human life in terms of savings. And you say, well, a New Zealander's worth $2-3 million in their lifetime in productivity. And how many have been killed and how many are going to be killed. And you analyze that and you just go, wow, there just are not enough kids killed or seriously injured in these areas to warrant the economic decrease in economic productivity we're going to get by these school speed zones. And in fact, you can get a whopping BCR by ripping all your school speed zones out. Yeah, you're going to kill some kids and seriously injure some kids, but the productivity benefits you're going to get are going to way outweigh that. The absolute grotesqueness of that sort of thinking is clear when you frame it like that, but it's so entrenched and interweaved into decision making that we do within road transport that's not as clear cut as kids and not as emotionally sort of intertwined as kids, but that is essentially the decision-making process on a BCR and a lot of stuff we do. Now, the question becomes, well, how on earth do you make a decision between investments if you don't use a BCR? Fair question. And dollar value per serious casualty saved is a pretty good one, which doesn't require you to put a dollar value on human life and trade it off. But yeah, we do have limited funds. Okay, let's. I'll just have a look at a comment here. So it's funny how mass action projects often get reduced in scope due to accountants wanting to see good BCRs, which is hard to calculate. Absolutely, and so rubbery sometimes, and fudged and massaged, and I absolutely agree with that comment. And I do use that school speed zone analogy in my frustration with the accountants and economists sometimes, and say, well, okay, if we're going to go BCR driven by everything, let's do it properly. Let's get rid of those school speed zones, and then they posture about externalities and political blah blah blah. And anyway, but okay, let's keep moving on. Let's get you to do a little quiz. Now I'm going to ask you a little quiz here, and it's going to pop up on your screen, hopefully. Now, you are not being marked on this, all right? So this is just for interaction And the first question we've sort of covered. The second question we haven't, but you can just have a guess at. All right. So hopefully that'll pop up on your screen. As I say, just have a go at it, and you're not being marked, and we'll use it for a bit of conversation. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds. Just have a guess if you're unsure there. And we've done pretty well. Thank you, everybody there. Lots of people having a go. I've stopped the poll, and let's have a look here. So most of you going with the aim for no mistakes on the road, and that's correct. That's really like we are in the space of minimize and manage. I mean, we have that realistic understanding that people will make mistakes, and we need to manage those. Sure, it's a nice utopian world where nobody makes mistakes and everything's perfect, but it's humans we're dealing with, so that's not a particular aim. And what speed did Usain Bolt cross the finish line in his world record 100-meter sprint? Bizarre question for a road safety course, isn't it? We got 24, 34, 40. The answer is 44 kilometers per hour. Well done to the 12 people who got that. Some of you probably did a little bit of calculation there, went 10 seconds about, and then this, and divide that by 100 meters and convert. Yeah, you've got to account for his acceleration time as well, though, and those sorts of things. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I may have been on mute there. Can somebody just pop into the chat whether they heard me talking about Usain Bolt there? My computer told me I was on mute. Yep, okay, I wasn't. So Zoom just Zoom gremlins there. Okay, so let's have a look there. Let's link Usain Bolt back to the safe system. Okay, if we parked a Toyota Camry, maybe like a 2015 Toyota Camry at the end of Usain Bolt's lane, and he came running down there at 44 kilometers per hour, and he bang slams into that Toyota Camry, is he going to survive at 44 kilometers an hour? Well, the answer is yes. He's going to survive. He's built like a fridge, so he's going to survive some pretty big forces. It depends, I suppose, exactly where he hits his head on the car, or the outside of the car. Prize for the person who can tell me the best place for him to hit his head on the outside of the car. Probably don't say tire, because I don't know that. But any ideas? Best place, friendliest place on a 2015 Toyota Camry to hit the car? Dwayne, windscreen, correct. Sorry, I'm going to write that down. Yeah, windscreens in those cars. And I had to pick a little bit of an older one there because a modern, probably a 2021 Toyota Camry would be the bonnet, because the bonnet would have a pop-up feature and potentially an airbag. I don't know if Toyotas are doing airbags on their bonnets, but certainly quite a number of the cars have an airbag that pops out over the bonnet for striking pedestrians, which is pretty cool. Right. So is he going to survive? Well, yes. And in fact, there's an interesting correlation between human running speed, maximum running speed, and ability to withstand the forces of hitting solid objects. You kind of evolved to withstand running into a tree at your maximum running speed. And so this will be assignment 1. We're going to get you to run as fast as you can at a tree and just prove that you will survive and lead a normal, healthy life after hitting it. Of course not. The principle is interesting though. And we do see that people who are more frail can't withstand energy, cannot run at these high speeds. And anyway, so there is this curve, and it's a general curve, and don't get too worked up on the specific details. But for a vehicle, passenger vehicle striking a pedestrian, what we see is around the 10, 20, 30 kilometer per hour mark, highly survivable for the majority of our population. Up around 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour, highly unsurvivable. Because this is fatality probability, chance of death. Not speed limit down here either. This is collision speed. I'm going to be clear on that. That's actual speed of collision. There's the great man. He comes a little higher up there because he's the hulk of a human, and that curves for the entire population. These are the kind of forces we're sort of designed to withstand. There we go. Broke a couple of ribs. Went on to win the gold medal in the Olympics a year later or something. So, you know, living a normal, healthy life. That's what we're designed for. We have this information for other crash types. So a right angle crash between two passenger vehicles. And this one we call the bullet vehicle. The bullet vehicle is the one that does the damage. This is the target vehicle, okay? So this is bullet vehicle speed down here now. Bullet vehicle speed around the 30, 40, 50 kilometers per hour. The target vehicle occupant on that right angle direct strike is likely to survive. Up around that 80, 90, 100, it's likely that they will be killed. And we see that for head-on as well, where we have somewhere around this 50, 60, 70 kilometers per hour for each vehicle. And in this case, each vehicle is the bullet vehicle and the target vehicle. And up around these sort of 100 plus, it's highly likely to be death. Now, some people say, oh, well, is that so at a 70 kilometer per hour, is that 70 kilometer per hour closing speed, or is it 70 kilometers per hour for each vehicle? So 140 kilometer per hour closing speed. Yes, it's 140 kilometers per hour closing speed. However, the force of the crash is a 70 kilometer per hour crash for each individual occupant of the vehicle. So they go from 70 to 0. Again, it's that deceleration that we're talking about. The forces are the same as running into a brick wall at 70 kilometers per hour. Now, some of you might go, I'm not sure about that, the physics on that one. And I'm going to put a little Mythbusters episode into Moodle because they crash cars into walls and at each other at speeds to prove this exact bit of physics, which is always good to watch Mythbusters on work time. So interestingly with this, we see around the 30 kilometers per hour, 50 kilometers per hour, and 70 kilometers per hour, somewhere around that speed is an exponential increase in death and serious injury. So things get really bad really quickly after this point for these crash types. And so that's really important for us to know. And those speeds are kind of critical to the safe system. We're going to use those speeds quite a bit. We're going to have a little break in a second, and I'm having a bit of hay fever here, but that's all right. We'll get through it. Interstate system assessment. We need to quantify this. We need to be able to quantify exactly, well, not exactly, but generally, what is the likely outcome in terms of death and serious injury for our community in a specific crash type? Okay? And in a safe system assessment, we'll take you through lots of detail about how to do it. You actually start to quantify the likely outcomes for humans. And you do that with some scores. Now, I'm jumping well ahead now, but you'll see a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1 here and a 0. They're the safe system assessment scores for severity. And then we've sort of given you this general guide on some different crash types, some speeds, different vehicles in there, and giving you an understanding of what are the expected outcomes. We will come back to this, but you have to be using this sort of stuff and your own judgment, of course. Let's see, there's a question. If the safe speeds are generally odd numbers, so 30, 50, 70, why are we maintaining focus on having speeds and speed limits of the evens, the 40, 60, and 80, or the first number, evens? Great question. And yeah, I mean, you will hear the push for the sort of 30 km/h pedestrian vulnerable road user areas and the like. And you can see now where it's coming from. That 30 above or below is a big sort of change in those graphs. And I think it's an evolution. I mean, speed zones, we can talk about this in lots of detail, but speed zones sort of evolved about, what's generally a right speed and what's a nice number, or 100 looks good, or, where they're going from miles to kilometers per hour. Where do we go? How do we change this? And, there was not a lot, there was next to no science around it. And now we've sort of inherently got these speeds that are higher than we like, and they're coming down, and there's a lot of sort of community acceptance integrated in that. But, in theory, the 30, 50, 70 would be a much better one. And we do see some countries like Sweden who have a default rural road environment speed of 70, and they will raise the speed limit on roads that they believe appropriate, rather than what we do is have 100 everywhere and fight tooth and nail to bring it down. I mean, there's a lot of work and thinking that we can do to alter some of this. Let me briefly take you through this. I'm running a little bit behind, but we're having good chats here. This diagram is something that you would have seen in road safety a lot. And it's the bane of my existence for a number of reasons. Well, and one thing is that I can't argue with the research and evidence behind it. But what it is a crash causation Venn diagram. And it's saying, what are the root causes of crashes? And it's always the driver or the road user, the pedestrian or the cyclist, the motorcyclist, right? In like 90% of cases. And then the road and the vehicle play a part in some of it. But the reason, and I don't dispute the research, the reason it causes me issues is because the immediate response to that is to alter the driver. I mean, why not attack the biggest problem? The root cause. Well, the reason it's not the best place to go, or it's only part of the place to go, is that it's very hard to change humans. I mean, yes, we could genetically engineer humans to do some better stuff. Not really a society we want to be living in, likely, or maybe it is. But what we want to move to is more a holistic system view of this and say, right, when there's death and serious injury on the road network, our system has failed. All right. So yeah, the human has made a mistake or the like, but why didn't our system intervene there? And now this is an Ostrone's diagram that had driver access and driver experience out. I just pop them in there. If somebody's able to go at excessive speed in a residential area or the like, something's gone wrong with our system. their vehicle should let them do that, and the infrastructure should let them do that. I mean, there's two immediate ones. Anyway, there's a bit of info in there on human error in the transport system as well, because people get fixated on this, deliberate violations, and the media loves to sort of fuel this fire, thinking that everything in road safety is that, intentional act of driving 180 or, doing burnouts or whatever it is. Actually, the majority of our trauma sits above this line in slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations. And somewhere around the 70% of death and serious injury people generally try to do about the right thing and being caught up in human sort of expected stuff at a macro level. Still 30% we need to deal with, pretty significant amount. But all right, what I want you to do is just a little exercise here, and I'm going to pop a poll up again. But taking the traditional way we viewed road safety and looking at where we want to go with a safe system, and all you're going to do is try to connect. Okay, so we did some victim blaming where we sort of pointed at the individual, didn't think about the holistic system failure. Where are we wanting to go to now? Are we wanting to, effort to create a forgiving environment? And you just connect them up. Now, a couple of these could go to a couple of spots, so don't get too worried if you don't get it right, but it's just a way to consolidate our thinking. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes now to have a go at this, have a stretch, fill up your coffee, and we'll get back into it in 4 minutes time. So I'm going to launch that. So hopefully you can see it, and I'm going to turn this off and be back in 4 minutes. Okay, we'll give you 5 more seconds. Just pop your answers in if you haven't yet, and let's get back into it. I've got a heap of stuff to cover in the next 50 minutes. I just ended the poll, and I'll share results very quickly. Hang on. Excuse me, tried to hit mute there. I didn't get it. I'm taking some hay fever medication. Let's hope that kicks in soon. Right. So where's that poll? I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm actually going to do it on the screen. I think it'll be a little bit easier. Okay. So now don't worry if it could have gone to a few of them. Victim blaming. Now we're recognizing human error and trying to minimize its consequence. That's shared responsibility. Emphasis on road user education and compliance. Really effort to create that forgiving system. Crash reduction versus now that focus on consequence, especially severe injury minimization. So, we're acknowledging property damage, style crashes, and minor crashes. 4 pillars actioned independently. We want to optimize those jointly as an interaction, and that's important. It is a holistic interactive system. And mobility safety balance to maximizing safe mobility, just a slight tweak on that thinking and that wording. So Ian Cameron, a Western Australian, made this statement, which I think is pretty good. We need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It is unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which a simple mistake no one can kill. I think it's a good summary of that. Let's do another little exercise here. I'm going to show you a road, and I want you to tell me, hang on a second. I'm going to sneeze again. No, I'm good. Here's a bit of road. It's obviously got a barrier system in a flushed narrow median, and you don't know much about the road, but here is another picture of it. This was the first flush narrow median road of its type in Victoria. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago now, but without knowing too much about this, what do you think were some of the challenges that the project team faced in getting this first of its kind system out there on this road? So flexible barrier, wire rope safety barrier in a flushed median, narrow, and a 2+1 style scenario. So a lane in that direction, 2 lanes in that direction, and then they sort of swap over at one point. So what I'm going to do is let you just type a few things that you think were big hurdles and big trouble for the project team, and in the project. And I'll jot a couple down which I found very interesting, and not necessarily the biggest hurdles, but if you match one of the ones I had, you can have a prize. So just things that you think were big challenges in getting this project in place, and just jot them into the chat. All right. I'm just saying, wow, as I see the things come in the sense that this group certainly knows the challenges of putting in a central barrier system in a narrow median. It's like you've all worked on these projects or something. Very good stuff. So I'll just run through a few of them. I'm sure a lot of you can see them all coming up because people are nicely putting a lot of these to everybody, so everybody can see. So we've got the road alignment. So that's the horizontal vertical alignment of the road system. That was certainly a challenge. Access to properties was certainly one that came up and an absolute challenge there. So I had that one on the list. So Hillary, you're on the prize list there because you're the first one to that. I see it came in a few other times there. So we'll just give the one for the first one as well. We've got the batters and the roadside environment and the challenges of widening and trying to accommodate all of this. Absolutely. Ash was the first one to mention maintenance. And maintenance was a big issue. Maintenance of the existing road or the road surface and how that would be done and how you would get traffic around it and how it could be done safely. Also the maintenance of the barrier system, which now the maintenance teams were genuinely, you know, at the point of saying you cannot put this in. Like you're going to put you in danger, our workers, and you're going to, we don't have the money to maintain this. Now, you know, those are legitimate things to be worked through, but I don't think that we can be saying we can't do this because of those. We just need to alter those things. But anyway, we'll get back to that. Lots of other great things. Yeah, safety and design coming into it. The cheese cutters or cheese graters, the motorcyclists complaining, absolutely. Emergency services, yes, that came into it. Shoulders, building, yeah, motorcycles, properties. Evan's put in their impact angles. I'm interested exactly what I mean by that, because it's probably another one that is linking to one of the prize ones. Not, as I say, the prize ones aren't necessarily the biggest ones, but ones I found interesting. I'll give Evan a prize. I'll give Evan a prize there for angle. I'll be nice and assume it was one of the things that I was talking about, which was the deflection of this barrier system was going to go into the oncoming lane. And so it didn't meet the standards of installing a barrier system because it didn't have enough of deflection space from the hazard as such. And, this hadn't been done. But it didn't meet standards. Yes, so Evan was on the same, so I was correct to give you that prize. Now, this is a really interesting one. So they couldn't get more road width, or that's the way they wanted to allocate it out. And this was a genuine one that was stopping the whole project going ahead. They said, no, you can't put a barrier system in there. You can't get the right deflection. And this is where you need to stand back and look logically at it and say, what do we currently have there, which was before the barrier? We have a white line. Surely the barrier system with slightly not as good deflection is a better outcome than that. And, it's this sort of black and white look at standards. We need to sort of elevate ourselves from that and look logically at what are going to be the impacts and benefits. And this is where a safe system assessment becomes this wonderful, wonderful tool to help us make these sorts of decisions, because it is absolutely not about standards and guidelines, as a road safety audit shouldn't be, although they often become a little bit more about standards and guidelines, probably than they should. But the idea that a safe system assessment will just look at this and quantify things according to their proposed benefit in road safety is a really wonderful tool. That one really astounded me as how it played out with the standards and guidelines people as a project. Anyway, so that went in and it got hit. Absolutely, it got hit. And we expected it to get hit. As we said, the maintenance people weren't too happy about it getting hit, but hey, that's what the barriers are there for. And it got hit. And interestingly, somebody called up the road authority and after this incident. And well, many of you work in road authorities and you know, or have, you know, when the public's calling you, it's usually to complain about something. And in this case, though, they actually just wanted to say thank you. And they said, I think that whoever put that barrier in saved my life. Anyway, they got that person and they said, can we just film you just saying this? And what I've done is I've put into Moodle and on your memory stick a little video from those people, which I think is a really wonderful explanation of the safe system in one sense, in that people have made mistakes. Somebody fell asleep, right? But the system kicked in and said, no, we're not going to let this be a death or serious injury. This can be property damage, right? In this case, the system was the infrastructure kicking in. But if that wasn't there, we would probably be blaming the driver. But you go, why were you driving when when you were so tired? You should have rested, You've got to be in control of the vehicle. All these sort of usual things. I mean, and there's sort of human mistakes, but we get ourselves caught up in a blame game. So it's just a wonderful example of safe system infrastructure in this case. So does anybody have any questions or comments about this at this stage? All right, let's keep moving along then. Doing well, and we've got a bit more to cover. Just a comment in here. So Nick's pointed out, similar on the Centennial Highway, very narrow median wire road, installed years ago. I don't think there has been a head-on side swipe since, even though it's a 1.5 wide centre line. Yeah, and certainly for the Melbourne Highway, we were pointing at that bit of road very much in our sort of cons, and it's always a little bit easier when somebody has done it in the world, or even easier when somebody's done it in the local area and you can point at it and show it work. But that's a really good example there. They're not without challenges, absolutely, but good examples of where we need to push beyond what our traditional approaches have been. We need to innovate and we need to try to address some of these just, in our face risks that we know are there, like driving at 100 kilometers per hour separated by a white line, driving at 100 kilometers an hour with trees close to the roadside. I mean, these things the energies are so staggeringly massive when the crashes occur. And really what we're relying on is 100% human compliance 100% of the time, which is not a system that is designed for humans. And yeah, and Mike's made the good point, the physical presence acts as a speed moderation tool. So it helps to moderate speed a little bit. And there's some pretty good research papers out there on some of that sort of stuff, and evaluations of the Centennial Highway. Mike might have even done some of that, I dare say. So there's lots of good intel out there, but I use it as this sort of example of a number of things. One, I love that little video, so do go and watch that. It's like 2 minutes and it's just awesome. But also it's this sort of like, no, this doesn't meet standards and guidelines, without being able to look logically at it, and safe system assessments being able to give you that logical look at safety. Let's just run through a few different things. I want to talk a little bit about road users. Now, as I mentioned, a safe system assessment is a holistic look at the system, and we will often look at road users and different things about the road users. It's not as big an element as the infrastructure. The safe system assessments are predominantly an infrastructure assessment tool. But we do try to look broadly and holistically, which is more than we've sort of traditionally done in a road safety audit or other road safety interventions. So I'll run through a few sort of basic things around road user safety that we know work and don't. And so you may use these in safe system assessments in one way or another, but it's also just good knowledge for you to have. And certainly if you're ever stuck for conversation at a barbecue, you can say to the person that you work in road safety and what are their thoughts on how we can improve road safety, and they'll give you a long explanation of their ideas, and you can have a few bits of information to give back to them in different elements that aren't your particular area of specialty. What we know works in changing or improving driver, rider, pedestrian behaviour is education, encouragement, enforcement, and the way you enter into the system and the regulations and graduated licensing and those sorts of things. Now, there are limitations on how much we can change it, and there's big time periods, but I don't want people to think that that improving road users is somehow not a part of the safe system. It's just we recognize the limitations on it. So this is not going to solve all our issues. Education's good. Obviously, education's better with little humans. They take on messages better, and they can even feed those messages up to their parents if you do it right. So instill that seatbelt wearing in vehicles is critical with them, and they will tell their parents to put their seatbelt on. Young drivers, particularly at risk, and what we know around this space is just hours behind the wheel on the public road network is where we get good improvements. We know getting them into safer vehicles is great, and they're offered in the unsafest vehicles on the network because that's what they can afford, whereas often their parents are in the safest vehicles on the network, which is a whole risk disparity dilemma. The other one is that sending kids to advanced driver training courses, anything high speed, learn how to do new skid, get out of skids and advanced braking techniques, will increase their chance of death or serious injury. Increase, right? We're making things worse by sending them on these advanced driver training courses, and that's one of the most well-researched, well-documented things in road safety around the world. There are training courses that can provide benefit. They're more sort of, I think what New Zealand terms a defensive driving course, which is to understand where risks appear and some of the basics and roadcraft and those sorts of things. But anything in that high speed, skin pad style stuff, what happens is the road user goes in, comes out more confident with their skills, takes more risks because they're confident they can get out of these, and that increased risk taking absolutely swamps any increase in skills to be able to get out of any of these scenarios. So just a little aside there. One of the other things in road safety, so in discussions we have with the community about road safety and trying to change behaviour, targeting the individual and their behaviour is a pretty problematic thing to do. And the reason for that, as I mentioned earlier, is this fact that at an individual level, risks are actually very low. And so here's mobile phone use. Let's use that as an example. The risk at an individual's level, so you or this, let's go with this guy. The risk of this guy being killed or seriously injured in a crash because he uses his mobile phone when he drives is minuscule. Like, absolutely minuscule. But the collective of all of our community, or the big portion of our community using their mobile phones while they drive, is a significant risk to the public, right? But what we end up doing is saying, we've got a risk here. And we say, don't use your mobile phone and drive because you will be involved in a crash. And the community the individuals Just go, no. Oh, yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years and, I haven't had an incident. Or they go, I only do it when it's safe and I'm a good driver and all of that sort of stuff. And to a degree, you can't blame them because they're kind of right. Like well, not in that parts of that, but they are not likely to be involved in the crash. So what we need to do is look for messaging that attacks something that they resonate more with, such as their kid, right? And if you can convince them that if they use their mobile phone and drive, their kid is going to use their mobile phone and drive when they get to driving. Now we're into something where they take a genuine interest. In fact, there's a good bit of evidence to show this around things like speeding as well, like pretty much for their safety as an individual, it's very low on their reason to slow down. But if you can make it for others' safety, environmental, protection of wildlife is actually far more influential than their own safety because they just don't believe it in that individual risk versus collective risk comparison. So this one's good. I like it. It's a PAC little ad. Whole of school approach is very effective. Education combined with other partner activities such as enforcement or the like is very effective. Support for community education. So a lot of motivated people in the community to improve road safety, and our job is to activate them with evidence-based stuff. And I do see a lot of things happening in community road safety groups which are either just a waste of time and money, like taking kids through the morgue to show them what'll happen if they don't drive properly. I mean, that we know that is it has no actual effect. It actually has effect on only the kids who are going to be the safest anyway. And it's the same with shock and awe campaigns. They are effective on the most compliant and safe members of our community when you're trying to scare the hell out of them. Graduated licensing systems and schemes are great. So you regulate entry into the system. And education targeting especially motivated groups, and the biggest being parents, of course. Action programs that change the way road users use the network. I'll talk about that more shortly. What doesn't work? I've talked about some of these. So fear tactics, scaring the public doesn't tend to change behaviour of those we want it to change. What it does do, though, is set a nice platform for legislative change. So it shouldn't be ignored. If you really want to put in specific legislation, you can scare the public and then they accept it more. Fear-based driver training, skill-based driver training is, I talked about that one quite a bit already. Any sort of one-off events, we want it to be a targeted, continuous event. There's not too much proof around driver simulators. There's a bit more sort of work happening in this space. It'll be interesting as we get improved driver simulators and what advantages they can give us in road safety. But for the moment, there's nothing really of proof out there. Memberships or participation in any of the car racing or go-karting clubs is not effective. And information-only approaches. So just telling people how many people have been killed on different roads or in different things doesn't tend to change behaviour. Again, a good platform for legislative change. So something to have a think about from that perspective. Here's a little diagram, which I suppose I think of, well, I use it for one particular purpose. So this is learner drivers who are essentially, they have a supervising driver next to them. As soon as they don't have that supervising driver next to them, this is deaths and serious injuries on the side. And this is for, I can't remember the time period it was taken. but it goes down over time. But it never gets back to the safety levels of the learner driver. And you can actually do this by raw number of crashes, which is this, or by vehicle kilometers traveled, crashes per VKT. And it's still the safest is the learner driver with no experience, or next to no experience. So anybody who pushes the barrow that it is all about skills and we should get everybody to do race car driver training and become these highly skilled drivers. I mean, this graph just proves that is just not the case. Like, that is not going to address our issue. Incentivizing campaigns seems to work a bit. So easiest example of this is paying people to drive safely. I mean, that sounds weird, but if we say to young drivers, if you go through your probationary period with no demerit points, we'll give you a full license for free. They actually change their behavior according to a couple of studies. So that's interesting. Advertising of the specific behavior you want changed. So instead of saying don't drive fatigue, you say take a break every 2 hours or something like that. Far more effective, a strategy, a particular behavior that can be put into place. And how you sort of get these messages on recall, like how do people resonate with the messages and change behavior? Very hard to measure. We know comedy can be quite effective for especially young males, and New Zealand's probably the best in the world at this. Some of your road safety ads are just wonderful and resonate beautifully, and they get their own entity. And I've put quite a few into your memory stick, some of the New Zealand ones, sometimes other jurisdictions have copied yours. But we're trying to sort of holistically look at a change in the system culture. And I'll talk about that more, but more and more we're seeing these sorts of ads. Again, a New Zealand ad that, oh, this one South Australia has borrowed it from you. Other people make mistakes. Not saying you make mistakes, other people are going to make mistakes, so we need to try to cater for them. How do we talk about human tolerance to physical force? Well, this is Graham. Graham is a life-size sculpture that looks scarily human and is the only human designed to survive the forces on the road network. I use the Usain Bolt analogy, but the TAC went with Graham and trying to get people to question why there are such high forces on our road network that we need. And we're doing we did a fun little bit of work with the TAC in terms of creating part of the year 11 syllabus where they have to recreate the road environment, and Graham, as a digital Graham, changes more back into a human as they do things like barrier systems, changing speed limits, putting roundabouts in and intersections and those sort of things. So trying to, in the long game, get people to question some of the inherent sort of physics of the road network. So I'm just looking at some of the chat there, which is good. So Hillary's met Graham in person. There you go. Does reduction in insurance premiums due to not having a crash create improved behaviour? Really interesting, fascinating one there. And Cam, you can have a prize for that because I think it's a really exciting opportunity. And we're going to see more of it with more advanced ability to alter insurances, insurance premiums. And we're seeing a lot of interest from insurance providers in having essentially devices in cars that monitor driving and adjust premium according to the way people drive. And that's pretty exciting, in my opinion. I mean, the technology is not the issue, by the way. Absolutely not. Privacy seems to be the issue. enforcement. Enforcement's good and it's critical, but it's not the the only thing we have. And again, like, what do the public think? They think enforcement is the answer, and it's not. The police don't ever profess to be the answer to our road safety. They're a small part of the system, or they're a part of the system. They're more a sort of keeping the system in the right position. But our system's fundamentally flawed at the moment. Strategic enforcement's good. Limited resources, target the right things. Specific and general deterrence are the ways we generally think about enforcement. Specific deterrence is, I have been fined for this, I will not do it again. General deterrence is, I could be fined for this, thus I won't do it. And visual presence is highly effective in general deterrence. And so that is quite an important thing not to lose. And certainly we know that enforcement is our immediate lever in road safety. We have natural fluctuations in death and serious injury due to the numbers. I mean, any statistician will take you through that. The way to get immediate alterations is from just heavy police presence. It's not a sustainable way to achieve things, but it is the most immediate. So apparently hearing here that some South African insurance companies are onto that already, so that's good. Smoke detectors in your house as a way to get insurance reduction. So that's a very great example. So there is possibility in there. And Chris has made the great comment that drivers and people don't like being sort of scrutinized on their driving and monitored, and that's interesting. They don't, and there's this sort of inherent idea of freedom and do whatever the hell you want on the public road network, which I think is something we might need to need to have a bit of a change, and so some support for a few things. This is good to have a bit of chat going on behind the scenes there. Speed cameras work. Point-to-point speed cameras are a highly effective way to target your speed enforcement over large areas. So that's take a photo of a number plate at one point, and then 10 kilometers down the track or 20 kilometers down the track, another photo, and just do an average speed calculation based on time. And you can get general compliance over that whole stretch, rather than just the point where they know the camera is and they slow down and then they go back to speed and the like. And these sort of, I would say, more socially conscious ways of enforcing it are, I think, better for society. Alcohol interlocks to me are a very great example. So an alcohol interlock being a device that's fitted to a car of a recidivist drink driver who can't stop themselves driving after they've had drinks. If we are to take their car off and crush their car, give them $20,000 fines, or all we're going to do is spiral their life further out of control. They won't be able to go to their job, they won't be able to pick up the kids, or whatever it is, right? So ways to try to address the risk itself is better, and our technology is going to take us there, because it's so advanced compared to where we are as a society in willingness to do this. But blow into this. If you're 0-0, your car will start, off you go. If you're not, car won't start. Actually, it then beeps at you as randomly along your journey, and you've got 5 minutes to blow back into it. That was version 2, after the first version had some people who got other people to blow into them so they could drive, which is this gives you an insight into some people's thinking. But anyway, there is absolutely nothing is stopping us from having speed interlocks. People who just cannot stop going at these high speeds, we could put an interlock in their vehicle that stop them going over the speed limit, and we've got speed limits, GPS track, or at least could monitor what their speeds are and the like, or give them some tolerance. The technology not stopping us. It's that privacy, the political will, and all that stuff. But there's some pretty good features in some of the new vehicles with speed limiters, different keys. Like you can give your kid one key, and it limits the car in terms of speed and traction control and stereo volume as well, amazingly, all these sort of things. But so great advances in technology, and I think it's going to be a huge part of our enforcement. This is my Vic Roads car about 15 years ago with a ISA device, intelligent speed assist device, which was telling me what the speed zone was and would beep at me if I went over the speed limit, which you could connect that into the vehicle to limit the vehicle if you wanted. So, 15 years ago, it was done. So technology, not our problem. So lots of, ways we can continue to work on driver behavior. So E-roads is a great system if organizations use the data effectively. I'm not 100% sure what E-roads is, so I'll have a look into that one. But yeah, I suppose monitoring drivers for work and collecting that data and understanding that is something that's very becoming very popular these days. Yep. Okay. It's similar. Yep. Fleet management system. So it is. Yeah. It's just a different name for what the telematics and the like. And it's a really interesting boom these days. And I'm slightly off topic here. Boom these days in people collecting data off vehicles in terms of braking, G-forces, these sorts of things, and trying to sort of present that as a way to start to find areas of risk on the road network. Be cautious on that to a degree. The evidence. Nobody's put forward really great evidence around that. We have some pretty good techniques for identifying risk on the road network through our established, proven, research-based tools such as IRAP, the International Road Assessment Program, KiwiRAP, and you can still use some crash data, but that's starting to become less and less, and more of these other features, other tools are more and more how you identify risk on your own network. You don't need to wait for crashes to know that there's a risky area, but come back. All right, let's have a brief chat about the vehicles. And vehicles are going to be amazing in the future. They're not quite there yet, okay? I'm hoping in my lifetime, fingers crossed here, the vehicles put me out of a job. But it's not going to be in the next 25 to 30 years, that's for sure. We know that they're continuing to advance, and we know that there is ability to get public appetite for safety. We saw that with ANCAP and different car star rating systems. But there are currently some pretty significant limitations in the system that we have, and the vehicle, I suppose, safety feature. So this is the head-on crash test to get 5-star ANCAP safety rated. And the dummy there can't be subject to forces over basically a level 3 serious injury, which is acquired brain injury. What speed do you think they do that crash at? Prize for the person who gets this closest. Yeah, all right. I'm going to give it to Alan. Quickest in there with 60. So it's 64 kilometers per hour is for the head-on. Let's have a look at now the side impact with the pole. What speed do you think? Same idea. What speed do they do that one at? Oh, Ash was on to that one. Oh, there's a good bit of knowledge here. Ash was on to 30 kilometers an hour. It just recently went up from 29 to 32 kilometers per hour. So 32 kilometers per hour, and that's a 5-star vehicle if it withstands that force. And when we think about, okay, we've got power poles, we've got trees, side of the road, and we've just acknowledged that humans are going to make mistakes, they're going to fall asleep, they're going to be distracted, they're going to leave the road, and we're trying to manage the energy of these forces. Relying on the vehicle as the mechanism for that is problematic in its current form, right? Head on the same. The vehicle features that are stopping these happening in the first place are going to be very advantageous: lane keeping, electronic stability control, auto emergency braking. They're all filtering in, but we need to be aware of the limitations. We need to be excited by the future, and we need to accelerate this technology. But just be aware that as infrastructure people, if we go, well, we'll just wait for the vehicles to fix everything, we are going to have a catastrophic amount of death and serious injury to our community over the next 25, 30 years until it sort of has whittled down. And I talked to you a little bit about pedestrian crash protection, which is pretty cool. But when are we going to get this? When are we going to get this? The car with no steering wheel that you just sit back and fall asleep and it takes you. Well, there's levels of autonomy, and we have, level. We have level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 autonomy. Level 5 autonomy is your vehicle that basically can drive anywhere. Without human control. Level 4 doesn't need a steering wheel as well, but it's designated to specific routes, and we see little shuttles and things going around like that these days. Level 3s and 2s and the like are different in-vehicle features, but still human control is very important and part of it. So we're going to sort of evolve, and it's going to be an interesting play out and how that mixes with some autonomous, some not, and which road users are getting the benefits, and big social disparity between people who can afford the higher levels of safety and not, and all of this sort of, it's fascinating. There was an Australian report saying they've identified 1,400 bits of Australian legislation that needs to be rectified before autonomous vehicles can be put onto the road network. So then we've got all those challenges as well. So, but interestingly, in a safe system assessment, there's this sort of discussion that sets a platform for us to start to think about road design for the vehicles of the future. And it's really centered around the idea of roads that cars can read. And as road designers and engineers and the like, we are going to start to more and more design and manage roads for these vehicles, or the electronic eye rather than the human eye. Now, cars with ability to see stuff have been programmed pretty much on the existing infrastructure, which was for human eyes. So it's sort of connected. But comm systems and areas where level 4 vehicles will switch off, or sorry, level 3 vehicles will hand control back to the driver, such as, an off-ramp or like the end of a freeway or something, is where the vehicle will say, hey, I'm not programmed to drive this, control being handed back. Well, how do you manage that area? Because if the driver's asleep or not reacting to that, what will the vehicle do? How do you control that area? Like, I'm just picking random little examples. It's such a fascinating space, and there's a huge amount in there. A safe system assessment starts us into that, and we'll have the ability to grow into the future. And then we've got some comments coming in. Technology makes mistakes, and that's right. I mean, technology makes a hell of a lot less mistakes than humans, that's for sure. But it does make mistakes, or it's programmed incorrectly, or it's never been programmed for that scenario. So we can't ignore that. I mean, I would take fully autonomous every time over humans in a lot of these senses, but in a bit of trolley car scenario and all these sorts of challenges. What happens when a Google OS car meets an Apple OS car followed by a Microsoft OS car and an Android OS car? And well, there you go. It's a wonderful little description of some of the complicated software challenges to deal with. Chris can have a prize for entertaining me with that one. Okay, I gotta finish this off fairly quickly here. So we should lose sight of encouraging more safety features into the fleet. Here we're seeing auto emergency braking happening. And, oh, there we go, knocked a leg off. But what we do see in that leg coming off was that the vehicle slowed before it hit the dummy there. And that's advantageous significantly. And let's talk about speed now. So speed is so critical to the safe system. And we know here that it's not a linear relationship. Speed is not a really linear relationship with crash outcome. So look, 60 kilometers per hour speed, travel speed. Hazard at 45 meters down the track. Driver sees it, reacts, and manages to get to the brake at that point. So they're viewing and picking their leg up, and then brakes and just touches it at 45 meters away at 60 kilometers per hour. Go up to 70 kilometers per hour. Reaction, braking, hits it at 46 kilometers per hour. There's only a 10 kilometer per hour difference there, but a 46 kilometer per hour difference there. It's not linear. All right. In fact, if you look at it for fatal and serious injury crashes, fatal crashes and speed change is a power relationship, and it's a fourth power relationship. Serious injuries is a third power relationship. All right. So those who don't play in power relationships and their maths and the like, I mean, the simple answer here is a small change in speed has big effects on our highest severity crash types. Small changes in speed, big changes in the outcomes and death and serious injury. And the reason for this is that you get two benefits out of speed. You get two benefits. You get a reduced likelihood of crash because there's more time to react, evade, and you get a reduction in the severity of crash. And you saw our S curves at the start. It's not linear when you're pulling it back into those. You get that exponential kick down. So we get some really wonderful benefits in alterations in speed. The public, especially around speed limits, are unconvinced. And I've put a bit of info and a few studies in there, and I've got lots of sort of studies and different things. I put a few into the resources. The public ain't convinced, well, half the public ain't convinced that speed limits have actual effect on road safety. I mean, there's so much evidence out there that it absolutely does, but the public ain't that convinced. They're a bit more convinced on the severity outcomes, a bit more understanding of basic physics and biomechanics of injury, that lower speed limits will result in lower severity of crashes when they occur. I suppose we are still questioning speed limits here. So maybe some of these people aren't thinking that you'll get lower travel speeds with speed limits. But in terms of I took this out of the Swedish Transport Authority, and I've put it into the Ostroads Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed and speed management, just to sort of remind of this. We can create a safe system with any types of vehicles, roads, and users, as long as we filter it through at appropriate speed. Now, okay, of course, we could, if we make the whole road network 20 kilometers per hour, we're probably going to get us pretty close to a safe system. But I mean, a transport network is to move people and goods. So we have to think about how we still move people and goods. But it is just important to remember that that's a filter that can be placed. And we know that you can achieve, safe speeds through infrastructure and/or speed limits. And infrastructure tends to be the best way to get that compliance, get the speed reduction. And speed limits, for some reason, that red circle around a black number causes all sorts of excitement and anger and these sorts of things. Explaining why a speed limit is in place can assist with compliance and acceptance. So especially with our vulnerable road users, it's quite effective. High pedestrian areas, schools, hospitals, these sorts of things. People are generally pretty accepting of these lower speed limits. Variable speed limits are going to be good. They're going to continue to give us benefit. I'm just going to go through this very quickly. Risk is the chance that something will happen and how bad it will be. In a safe system assessment, we include exposure out of risk. So it's how many people are exposed to this crash, what's the chance of an individual crash, and how bad is it going to be? And this is what we're going to focus on next week. And we'll talk about things like exposure being changed by closing off level crossings or intersections, or completely separating vulnerable road users from vehicles from those crashes. We'll talk about likelihood with sealed shoulders, line marking, wide center lines, lighting, good signage, surfaces, traffic signals, all changing the chance that a crash can happen. And severity, we'll talk about severity being the speeds, the angles, the weights of vehicles, and, things that could slow vehicles down at conflict points, or could redirect and distribute energy over time rather than a quick, impactful stop. So that's all to come next week. You have a quiz in Moodle that you're going to have to do, okay? And you're going to, I can bring that up very quickly. Sorry, just grab that. You are going to do a quiz. It's in Moodle. It's got about 10 questions. One of them's how many Wallies did you see? And it's just to consolidate. That's all you have to do. Get into Moodle, find the quiz in module 1, and do that quiz. We've only got 20 seconds, so I won't show you that, but I'll see there's one. Okay, and a good comment there about speed and the vision, your field of vision at different speeds. And there are some interesting diagrams out there showing that your field of vision narrows at higher speed. So that's a good one. Any final questions or comments? I rushed a little bit through the end, but we pick that up again next module, and we talk about exposure, likelihood, and severity under the SAFE system as our way to identify and quantify risk. So beyond likelihood and severity. Thank you very much. Apologies for my hay fever a little bit through there. Medication's kicked in now for sure. Have a wonderful day. If you haven't got access to Moodle, get in contact with Emma, do your quiz, and we will see you at the next module.